What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Creative Hunter Podcast. Thank you for joining me this week. This is your host, as always, Logan Romney. Um, if you're watching on YouTube, like a lot of my listeners and watchers do, you've probably noticed already. I shaved the beard; it's all gone. I just kept the stash and just rocking the stash for a little bit. I love the beard, actually, and I probably am going to grow it back in the next year or two because I actually really liked it. But for now, just making a change, cleaning up a little bit, looking a little bit more professional, not for any specific reason other than just kind of wanting to do it for fun. So cleaned up, clean shaven, just got the stash. It's super long. I'm probably going to trim it up here soon. But anyways, um, it is mid-September right now, so a lot of elk hunts going on right now, archery hunts. Um, I've already been on a few archery mule deer hunts. I had one of my own. You guys already know about that. And then I went on one earlier, um, first week of September with uh, with Marlon Holden, gray light hunter. Super cool guy. I went and photographed for him. We're gonna probably make a little film with that hunt that we went on. We ended up killing the stud buck, and if you want to check it out, you can go see pictures over on Marlon's channel or on his YouTube or his Instagram. So Gray Light Hunter over there. Go check him out, and he's also just super knowledgeable. He has um, some great content on mule deer hunting. He has an app called the Gray Light app, Gray Light Hunter app. I'm not sure exactly, but it has tons of hunting tips on hunting mule deer, different times of year, different locations, like desert, high country, mid country, what the deer are going to be doing, early season, mid season, late season, um, all sorts of stuff. And he's just an awesome guy. And I really liked working with him and capturing his hunt. So probably be working with him a little bit more in the future, I hope. Um, coming up for myself, I've got kind of a few last minute things that have come up for filming. I've got a hunt this week that is a Utah rifle elk hunt, so that'll be super awesome because it's a rifle elk hunt during the rut, and it's in a unit with a ton of big bulls. Um, and I'm just filming and photographing that for a private client of mine. No brand specifically, just a private client. And then after that, I do have a rifle antelope hunt in Idaho that I'll be filming for a couple of days with Levi Watson. Um, cool guy. Haven't met him yet. It's kind of the first deal. I've talked to him a bunch on the phone and we've texted and all sorts of stuff. But super excited about that one. And then that's pretty much it for my September so far. I have a bunch of school classes going on, so I'm really busy with that. That actually starts today. The school does. And then I have still one more tag that's open right now for myself, and that is my general season archery deer is open to the end of September for Idaho where I live. Um, I will probably end up getting out a few days for that hunt, but I'm going to be pretty picky because since I'm a resident of Idaho, I still have the rest of September for archery. I have October for rifle, and then I have a few units that are open in November for archery that I can go hunt. So I have a lot of opportunity left for that hunt. So I'm gonna be pretty picky. But I just this last week, if you haven't seen on Instagram, I filled my general archery elk tag in Idaho. Super cool. It was my first archery elk I've ever harvested. Um, He's a stud bull, nice 6 point. He's probably around 300 inches. Just I couldn't have asked for a better bull for my first bull. I want to get into the story of it and kind of just tell you guys how I did it, or the tactics I used, and just kind of how it worked out. But that was really fun. But before that, my wife, she has a rifle tag here in Idaho, and she also drew on a really good rifle elk tag that is in October. So we're gonna try to get her on an elk here in October. Um, the only thing she's ever harvested is a turkey, and that was this spring. So she's never killed a big game animal. So I'm really excited to get her out. I know she's actually super excited to get out as well. So we're stoked. We got a good season, and so far it's stacking up to be pretty good. I've already killed two awesome animals with my bow, and this is the first year I've ever killed big game animals with my bow. So pretty cool. A little bit about that. So like I've always owned a bow since I was in high school. So for years I've owned a bow and I've shot it, and I've never taken the hunt portion of it as seriously as I have with rifle hunts. I've just never spent as many days in the field. Um, I've never just practiced as much as I have the last couple of years, and actually tried to get on animals with my bow. Last year was the first year that I had archery only deer tag, and I put a lot of time into it. I put 14 days into the hunt, and I didn't kill a deer. That whole film is on my YouTube channel. The high country mule deer hunt from last year, and I learned a ton. I went on a ton of stalks, and I just didn't couldn't quite get it done. It just nothing ever lined up. This year, um, like you guys know, I've already killed two animals with my bow. You could maybe say like a flip switched in my head, but I don't really think so. Maybe yes, but only because I've put in a ton of time perfecting the craft. I'm nowhere near like very good at all at archery hunting, and you'll hear from the elk story, um, kind of just some of the things that happen there. But well, you'll see I have a ton to learn. But I went on that mule deer hunt this year with my bow, and I mean I stalked five different deer. I missed one, and then I finally killed one. So it was just a learning process, and I've kind of come to realize that the whole time when it comes to deer and elk, like I've already known how to hunt them with my bow, and I know how to do it. It's just that I get discouraged. I get hung up on things. I get in my head about like, oh, is the stalk gonna work? Am I gonna be able to do this? And it ends up just not working out, because I don't let it work out, and in my head. And I've kind of made a switch to where instead of, if I'm stalking a deer, instead of being super anxious and anal about every little thing that I'm doing as I'm going in on the stalk and trying to be as quiet as possible and just like super high anxiety, I just try to calm down and be in the moment. Um, don't let my mind like think about anything too much, and just really just focus on calming myself down, and just remembering that it's just a deer. All I gotta do is get close enough and stick an arrow in him. Like that's all it is. There's nothing to get too amped up about or too high of anxiety about. That's all I gotta do. And as I started to make that change in my head, it's like I'm starting to kill more animals with my bow. Um, and I'm just kind of starting to get into that groove of figuring out how to kill animals with my bow. Now, the other thing that I think is really in my favor is that I'm pretty dumb relentless um, when it comes to hunting. So if an opportunity doesn't work out, instead of giving up early on the day or ending the hunt early, I'm just gonna get after it and find the next opportunity and go for it. Like I said on the deer hunt, I went on five stalks and finally one worked out, and I even missed a buck on one of them, and um, just keeping pushing forward. It gets very discouraging sometimes, but keeping pushing forward is probably the biggest thing that has helped me um, just start killing more animals this year and even last year. Um, uh, I actually didn't kill anything last year, but just getting more opportunities at things last year, and realizing that I don't have to kill something to be satisfied. That being out there is kind of the most important part, and it's kind of still something that I struggle with, because obviously we're all out there with a goal to harvest an animal, but it also it doesn't mean that you have to harvest an animal every time, every year, on every hunt. Anyways, with that said, let's hop into this elk hunt. So I uh I grabbed an over the counter tag in Idaho. I am a resident, so I didn't have to buy it early or anything. But it's the same tag that anyone can go get. Even a non-resident can buy this tag that I was hunting, and I bought the tag, and had a few days to get out. So um, I had Monday through Thursday. Um, it's a new area to me. I'd actually never hunted this spot before, but I did some e-scouting, and I knew of a place where I thought if I got in here, it was a few miles to get back in there. I was like, there's probably elk there. It was kind of up against some private stuff where you can't hunt, and so I thought this might be good. The elk might be kind of moving back and forth between this private and this public side, and lots of timber and just rolly hills, and some finger ridges coming off the top of this ridge, and pretty thick country though. There was it was like impossible to glass anything because there was so much timber. But I got in there the first day and the first morning, and there was just elk bugling everywhere. I started at the bottom of the hill, and I thought I'd work my way up until I got to the top and just hunt my way the whole way. And so, literally, I got to the bottom of these finger ridges I wanted to work up, and there was already elk bugling. And so I was like, "Okay, this is so sick! Like this is crazy. I didn't think that I would run into this many elk already." And the first day, I worked my way up, and I I remember like I got in. There was like I was working up the timber, and I ended up seeing a nice 6 point bull by himself walking through the timber like 100 yards away from me. He was going up the hill, and the elk were kind of making their way up the hill to their bedding areas, and I just never got close enough to him. But I like tried to get in and do some cow calls, and he would kind of chuckle at me, but he never came close. It was hard because when you're by yourself, a lot of you guys have probably noticed this when you're elk hunting, but you can do some calling. But if the elk get within, I don't know, 50 to 100 yards, and they don't see that there's an elk there, they're going to be a little suspicious. So um, I I knew that was the case, but I still kind of wanted to try and call a little bit and just see if the elk were responding at all. And the whole 4 days I was up there, I didn't really have any luck at all calling, other than I would have my bugle tube, and I would bugle and see if I could get elk to respond to kind of know their location. Um, so day one, I didn't really get on a ton of elk, but they were all around me, and they were going crazy. Um, actually, so I'm forgetting in my head now. So actually, day one, I uh, I did end up getting on one bull. So I heard some bugles up this canyon, so I thought I'd get up on a ridge and get up, see if I can just find anything. And I went up, and oddly enough, I stopped at this one point, and I'm like, man, there should be kind of elk close by, but it's so thick you can't really see anything. I was just gonna wait for a bugle or something, and I heard something walking up the hill. I mean, a big animal. I knew it was an elk walking up the hill, so I crouched down and I saw antler tips coming up, and it was a raghorn 5 point bull. And I've never killed a bull with my bow before, so I was gonna be good with like any elk. I was gonna shoot it. If it was a spike, I probably would have shot it. And this bull came up and he fed, and he was probably 40 yards away as he started coming up, and then he got to like 35 yards, and he was feeding straight towards me, and I'm just like crouched down in the grass in the wide open. So I pulled back my bow, and made a cow noise, and he looked up and he's facing me, so front on, and I shot right towards like center mass of his body, and my arrow hit perfectly where I thought it would, but it like hardly got any penetration. So the arrow like stuck in right in his sternum, and the bull whirled around and went down with the rest of the elk that were only like 100 yards away. I didn't know they were there though, but he went down with them, and he didn't bleed a ton. There wasn't a lot of blood. That arrow hardly stuck in him at all, and I ended up blood trailing him over the hill into private. I didn't have access. There's a chance that bull didn't even die. Um, I don't know, but it was a little bit heartbreaking on the first day to lose an elk like that. Um, but I kind of just worked through it in my head, got over a little bit, and definitely disappointed, and I would never want that to happen. And it was tough to think through, but um, people might give me like crap about it for not trying to find it more, but it was on a piece of land that I didn't have access to, and I wasn't gonna get access to, and I just ended up losing that bull. So um, I got over it in my head and just decided, all right, we're gonna keep hunting. Um, Not gonna let it bug me too much. So um, I headed down for the day, came up the next morning. Next morning, day 2 of the hunt. And on day 2, I I got in there. Same deal. There was elk everywhere, but they weren't as hot as day 1 was for some reason. I think it was because it was a clear night. The moon was kind of out for some of the night, so the elk might have just been more active during the night. So they weren't really um, bugling as much as they were the day before, and they weren't out for as long. They kind of bedded up early. Um, didn't end up getting on any elk that day, but I was in elk all morning till around 9:30, and then they were kind of quiet, and so I ended up heading down the mountain early that day. Um, Next morning, day 3, my wife came with me, so Ellie came up. She wanted to kind of see what it was all about. She's never heard an elk bugle or seen an elk in the wild, so I kind of wanted to give her some experience before her elk hunt in October. Um, so, same deal. We got in there right off the bat. At the bottom of the hill, there's bugles. And we worked our way up the hill, and we found we kind of got up to the top, and kind of the elk started to quiet down a little bit. We ended up getting up there around 8 o'clock, and just we we did like we chased bugles here and there, but we just never could get close enough, and really didn't see much um, until like 8:30, and we heard a couple elk bugling back and forth to each other on a ridge. So we dropped down, got up on the ridge, and we were working our way towards one of the elk sounds, and we ended up busting that herd out at like 100 yards through the trees. They ended up seeing us, blew out, not very hard though. Like they were like a couple of them ran off. I cow called a little bit, and some of them would stop and look, and we were sneaky enough. They didn't really see us. They just kind of they knew something was there because the other elk ran off, but then they ended up just kind of moving off, and we didn't get an opportunity at those elk. And so we went down to the other bugle that we were hearing, and as we were working down, I was like, all right, these elk have stopped bugling for the day, but I know there's elk down in here on somewhere on this in these pines. So we stopped. We ate some breakfast real quick, and we started working down slowly. And we got to a point where I was like, all right, I think that either we've passed the elk, we just went the wrong way, we something. And so I was kind of letting my guard down, and started walking a little faster, making a little more noise as I was walking, and like literally when I let my guard down, like 20 yards later, elk like 80 yards away jumped up and ran off. I was like, dang it, are you kidding me? Like, don't let your guard down when you're in the woods like that. And we ended up bumping like 2 or 3 groups of elk as we were going down that ridge. Um, and we weren't being super sneaky because I just I didn't know that there was more elk down the ridge, and there just ended up being more elk. And so um, I don't know if there was any bulls. We didn't really see anything. We would just hear them run off and get to their beds and smell them everywhere. You know how it is. And it was cool though because we saw some elk. Ellie got to see some elk and hear them bugling all morning, and it was cool. So day 4, I was watching the weather all week, and most of the days were just kind of like nice clear days. It got down to like 40 degrees at night, and it get up to 60 to 70 degrees during the day. And Thursday ended up being like a high of 53 degrees, and it was like a 10% chance of rain all day. So I was like, this is a day that's going to be really good. Like 40 to 50 degrees all day. There's going to be elk bugling all day. I'm like, this is going to be wicked. But it's going to be raining, so it's going to kind of suck a little bit. But I packed my rain gear, just threw on my jacket. I went up that morning, and right off the bat, actually this morning I got up earlier because I was like, I want to be up at the top because that's where most of the elk activity was right up at the top of the mountain. And there was elk down lower, but they kind of worked their way up in bed throughout the day. But I was like, I want to be on the top of the mountain. That's where like most elk have been bugling. So day 4, I got up earlier. I worked up to the top before it was light, and I got up on a ridge. I heard an elk bugle on the same ridge I was on. So I was like, oh, perfect. I'm gonna be like on this elk this morning. And I was walking up the trail and just keeping an eye out, kind of walking relatively slow but quiet, and just watching. And I looked like almost behind me, and I saw an elk through the trees. Like I literally almost walked past these elk at like 80 yards, and they had no clue I was there. I was like, oh crap. So I was looking around. I saw like a couple cows, 1 or 2 cows, and then I saw this bull, and I was like, oh, it's a nice bull. It's a nice 6 point bull. So I kind of started creeping towards them, and they kind of worked their way over the ridge that I was on. So when they worked over, I moved pretty quick. I like worked. I mean, I got to like 80 yards, but then I just like once they moved out of sight, I kind of like walked quickly to the edge to see if I could peek over and see them. And there was a couple cows I did not see that blew out. I was like, crap. So I made a couple cow sounds. I still got to the edge of this ledge where it dropped off, and I could hear elk like moving around below me. They were like, they didn't know what was going on. They didn't see me, but they think that maybe there's like an elk up there. And the bull, since I made a few cow sounds, the bull thought there's still some cows up here, so I don't want to leave before I gather these cows up. And the bull was like running kind of back and forth below me. I would just like see his antlers, and it's pretty cool. And I'm like sitting there. I'm like, okay, I have my sight set to 35. I'm like, this bull, if he comes up, he's gonna be pretty close. He's gonna be like around 40 yards. The bull ended up. I could see antlers coming up the hill, so I drew back. He came up. His body was out of sight, or his body came into sight for me. So I made a cow noise, just at him, and in my head, I'm like, that elk's like 45 yards. He was really like 35, and my sight is set to 35. So in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna aim high because that elk's at 45. I didn't range. I actually didn't range him, so I didn't know exactly, but I'm guessing in my head. And so I'm shooting for 45. I aim high with my 35 pin. I shot, and my arrow went straight above his backbone, just through the meat, like through his back straps, like high. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And the elk whirled around and took off with his cows, and he was bugling as he was going. Like he was fine. Like it was a total, like totally had he was totally fine, which was it sucked. I was like, oh dang it, like that's a nice bull. But I'm also like, okay, this is like literally first light, and I just got on a bull. So I found my arrow, grabbed it. There was like no, there was no, there was like some hair on it. Like it wasn't anything crazy. And so kept working elk all morning, and I ended up kind of getting close to a couple other bulls and just didn't quite get any shots off or anything. And it was getting later. I think it was like 9:30 or 10, but it was still cold and still slightly sprinkling, so the elk were still going off. It was pretty cool. And I heard an elk up on a ridge, and I was kind of starting to think the elk were kind of slowing down. So I was kind of thinking like, oh, should I start heading back down and just like hunt my way down a couple of these ridges, or stay up at the top and see and just wait? And I heard a bugle on a ridge next to me, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go after that bugle. And I dropped down, and as I was starting to come up the other side, I spooked out two spikes and a cow, and they like kind of ran around below me, and but they didn't really know I was there, so I made some cow noises, and they just kind of kept going down, and I I was like, I think there's more elk up there. I don't think that they all spooked. So I came up over the ridge, and I started walking through the trees slowly, and I spotted a cow and just feeding. She was fine. And so I kept walking a little bit above her, and I spotted this gray bodied bull. I looked at him, and I just see like beautiful rack with like big back tines. Like nothing was weak on this bull. He was just like a stud bull. I was like, that's a sick bull. And all I could see was this one cow below me, and then this bull. And I was already about 100 yards away from the bull. And so this is like timber stuff where you can see about 100 yards, but then it starts to get too thick to see any farther than that. And so there's trees spread out, but and it's timber, but it's not super thick. You can see enough through it. But what I was doing is since I saw that bull, I decided, okay, I'm just gonna like keep his head behind trees, and I'm gonna slowly walk towards him, super slow. Keep an eye on that cow below me, because if she spots me, that's not good. And I'm just gonna creep in. I'm just gonna be calm, like this is chill. Just put off good vibes, and just get in on this bull. So I started creeping in, and he was just feeding here and there, and I got in. I was at like 56 yards, and I'm like, and this I could see there was two trees, and the bull's body was in between the two trees. So his head was cut off and his butt was cut off by these trees. So he could not see me. And I'm like 57 yards. I'm like, I think as long as this elk is just hanging out here, I'm just going to keep walking towards it and try to get closer. Because I'm like, 57 yards isn't a bad shot, but I'm like, if I can get below 50, that's perfect. Like, I'll take a shot below 50. And the cow was doing fine, so I just kept creeping, just super slow, just taking like one step at a time, super slow. Got to 47 yards. The elk's still there. I'm like, okay, this is my shot right here. Like 47 yards, or I think it was 46 yards. I'm like, that's easy. I can do that all day. So there's this gap in the trees. I can just see his body. His head's gone and his butt's gone. So I just stepped to where I could perfectly see that crease right where I wanted to shoot him, pulled back, and just like I was so calm. It was perfect, and I just held that pin on him. Boom, perfect break in the shot. Arrow, I just heard it like thwack right through the vitals of that bull. The bull had no clue what hit him. He ran like 20 yards, and he like looked around, and I could see him like start to like wobble. And he was like, he didn't even like, he had no clue. The cow that was below me, like 100 yards, didn't even know what was going. Like she was still feeding after I shot. It was crazy. So I just crouched down. I saw that bull, and his legs started getting weak, and so he sat down and put his head down, and it was nodding. He probably, I mean, he was there for maybe 4 or 5 minutes until he just tipped his head over and he was done for. And it was like the coolest thing ever. I was so pumped because that was a perfect shot. And I was getting in on elk every day, and nothing was working out. And I finally it all came together, and it was like just such a good feeling. It was so cool. And as I was walking down there, like a couple elk down below blew out, and they had no clue that I was there either. So pretty cool. I was pretty sneaky. Got in there and got it done. That bull was dead before any other elk even knew I was there. So um, super fun. And then I ended up I was by myself up there. So I was about 2 miles down to the trail, and then it was 2 miles back to my car. So it was a long haul to get back and forth in there to pack this elk out. So um, it was pretty much raining all day, so I was soaking wet. I had to cut up this bowl and quartered him up, packed him out. Took me 3 trips, and then on my last trip, I had Ellie and her dad came up and helped me pack out the last trip, and it was dark, like 11. We got to the elk at like 11:30 on the last load and packed it out. So super cool, awesome hunt. Like super stoked about how it ended up, and it was just kind of a personal hunt for me. I didn't film any of it. I just kind of wanted to go and just experience a hunt without the cameras, um, which was really fun. I didn't have to worry about trying to film anything. I don't know that I would have necessarily missed any opportunities if I did have my camera with me, but it would have been really tough to film that hunt, especially by myself, um, because there were so many things that like had to adjust and move and change and be mobile with my location and where I was sitting, that it would have been hard to actually make a solid film of it with by myself with my own cameras. So um, maybe next year I'll try it and just throw a GoPro on or something while I'm out there and see if I can capture some of these moments. But this hunt was just for myself, and I was really excited how it ended up and turned out. But I'm also really excited to get the camera back out and go film some hunts and film some of my own hunts again this fall. So, anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I'm gonna wrap it up right here. Just kind of a couple takeaways from the hunt is that I hardly called at all. I kind of already mentioned this, but like you don't have to be a good elk caller. You don't even have to have an elk call to go hunt elk. Like I could have killed this elk with 0 calls at all. I ended up not needing calls to kill this elk. And honestly, sometimes it's probably better to not have any calls because then you're not calling when you shouldn't be and making the elk aware of your presence. Um, but there's also it's fun to call in bulls. So if you have bulls that are callable and they're not super call shy, then like get after it and go call them in, especially if you have buddies with you. But if you're by yourself, my preferred method right now is just to be super sneaky, listen for bugles, and sneak in. Um, it's I was thinking about it. I'm like it's not spot and stock. It's like it's hear and stock. You hear them and you stalk them. You can't spot them because it's not spottable country. So you just have to listen for them, and hear them, stalk in on them. So super cool. But um, thanks for listening. I've got a couple of people reach out and have some recommendations for people to have on the podcast. So I'm going to reach out to a few folks and see if they're willing to hop on the podcast and chat. Um, Again, if you have any questions, anything you want me to cover, any other people you want me to have on the podcast, let me know in the comments, shoot me a DM, whatever works for you guys. Um, I'm really loving doing these podcasts so far, and I'm still having a good time. And I think we're on I think it's like episode 22, I think. Um, so super stoked about it. Just gonna keep it up and keep going, and just have more guests on, and keep up with the hunting stories because it's fun. I like sharing stuff like this with you guys, and I hope it helps. I know like we're kind of focused with this podcast on camera stuff and on hunting stuff, and so I kind of want to cover both of them because they're both my passions. And some people I feel like are in the exact same boat as me. So um, if you have questions on camera gear, camera stuff, let me know. We'll cover that stuff as well. But thanks you guys for listening. We will catch you guys next week.